Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Spectator Sports. I'm your host Sebastian Fonseca. Before we get into this episode, you guys know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, and for my Spotify listeners, if you give us a 5-star review, that would be greatly appreciated. All links are in the description. So it's so good to be back after a couple weeks outside the country. I went to Italy and got to see quite a few things in Rome and Naples, and went down to the Amalfi Coast. I got to see AS Roma play in the Europa League final. They lost to Sevilla, and saw Napoli's last match and celebrated with them in their Serie A title. And a few pictures of that are on the Instagram page, so you guys can take a look at that. Link is in the description. I'm glad that I don't have to watch NBA Finals games at 2:30 in the morning thanks to that 6-hour time difference. But to talk about the NBA Finals, we have a new champion. The Denver Nuggets are the 2023 NBA champions, and they won in what I believe would be a dogfight in Game 5, and Miami really brought it. I mean, they're a team that's always going to scrap and claw to the very end. That is Heat culture. From the opening tip, they brought the energy. Bam Adebayo had a nice dunk after taking the ball away, and he established some type of dominance. He had 14 first quarter points, and he was the more aggressive Miami Heat player that I've seen. And I'm really liking this aggression out of Bam Adebayo. We haven't seen that throughout his career. He's more of a defensive guy, and he can do things offensively, but this amount of aggression we've seen throughout the finals, I'm really liking out of Bam Adebayo. Still, Miami didn't have enough to really put the Denver Nuggets away. Denver was really in a hole just because they couldn't make a three-point shot. They made only 1 out of 15 in the first half. Continued to struggle. I mean, they only finished with 5 out of 27 for the entire game, and they were within arm's length distance thanks to Michael Porter Jr., who had a phenomenal first half. 9 points, 8 rebounds. He struggled throughout this whole series with shooting, but still was able to keep the Nuggets afloat, and until the other guys who were in foul trouble like Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic all struggled with foul trouble in the first half. In the second half, we got to see the Nuggets finally make their run. They were trailing throughout the second quarter. Finally, a 3 to even it up at 60 by Jamal Murray. We thought this is when the Nuggets are going to seize control. In the fourth quarter, each of the team's leading stars, Nikola Jokic and Jimmy Butler, were kind of exchanging blows. Nikola was getting it going, making baskets from all over the place, and then Jimmy Butler was doing his thing. After a quiet first half, he was getting a few free throws in as well. Some controversy late in that fourth quarter where he went up for a jump shot. Didn't seem that he drew enough contact. He even kicked Aaron Gordon in the groin, obviously incidental, but he was given 3 free throws. Aaron Gordon was charged with a foul. Weird refereeing in this because the consistency wasn't there. They let the two play, but then sometimes it seemed like Denver was getting called for a lot of fouls that were strange and ticky-tack to say the least. Miami again came up with the last gasp thanks to Jimmy Butler going on a personal 8-0 run to retake the lead, and then it was just a back and forth between Denver and Miami. Bruce Brown had a nice putback to put his team up in front, and that was a lead that they would never relent. Some weird sequences for sure in the fourth quarter late where Jimmy decided to pass up. He got trapped in the paint and he had a turnover thanks to KCP, who was pretty good in this game. Very clutch defensive performance there. Had 2 free throws to boost the lead up to 3, and then Bruce Brown put the finishing touches, and the Denver Nuggets are NBA champions for the first time in franchise history. There's been this whole narrative about how they got here, the path they took to this NBA championship. They beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, an 8 seed, in 5 games. They beat the Phoenix Suns in 6 games with KD, Devin Booker, and some of Chris Paul at least. And in the conference finals against the Lakers, they swept them, and they were a 7 seed. So adding on Miami Heat, who are an 8 seed as well, though a lot of people are saying, well, they didn't beat a lot of good teams, and I have a rebuttal to that. You can only play who is up against you, first of all, and they didn't play around with their food. They didn't struggle on this path to the title. They only lost 4 times. The max amount of games they were ever pushed was 6 in the conference semifinals. They never were on the brink of elimination, and they were 4-1 in closeout games. So they handled their business for the most part. Very dominant run, and it's not their fault that the other teams in the Eastern Conference didn't hold up there in the bargain. I mean, Milwaukee lost in the first round. The second seeded Boston Celtics didn't get through the NBA Finals. Philadelphia, a top 3 seed in the East, didn't even get past the second round. It's not Denver's fault, and the fact that they dominated on the way to this title only proves that they are one of these elite teams that will go down in NBA history. While Denver was down, a lot of their good players were in foul trouble. Aaron Gordon had 3, Nikola Jokic had 2, and Jamal Murray had a couple. So they looked to Michael Porter Jr., who was struggling for much of this series with his shot. Still didn't have extraordinary gaudy numbers, but again, in Game 5, he had another double-double. The thing is, Michael Porter Jr. is a guy that is just so skilled. I really like his game. He's a 6'10" forward, just an unblockable shot just because he can jump so high, and that release point is just untouchable, just like Kevin Durant is. Very pure jump shooter, a phenomenal technique in terms of shooting form. I love the stroke, and the fact that he can also defend with that length and get down on the block and rebound as well. He is just a guy that can do a little bit of everything. Developing a passing game too that we're seeing. He had a couple nice dishes out on the wings, especially that one to Jamal Murray to tie up the game in that third quarter. But his contributions in Game 5 were truly monumental, because if he didn't have that type of performance, I think the Nuggets would have lost Game 5 and we would still be having an NBA Finals and the series would be going to Miami. For a guy that came into this league obviously having some injury issues, he dealt with them in Missouri with a back injury. Those lingered on for the first year in his NBA career, and still had some injury issues even last year, missing a majority of the previous season. The Nuggets stuck with him, and that's what they've done. They've built a culture around players that have been overlooked and done so from the ground up. And he's been an integral piece to this championship team. I think he's only scratching the surface, and he'll be vital for Denver's title defense next season. Some other notable players, obviously, we like to talk about the veterans who are part of this championship team. And DeAndre Jordan, I mean, he's a guy that, yeah, he's not the same as he used to be in his Lob City days with the LA Clippers, but he was an all-star up there amongst one of the defensive all-NBA teams for sure. And now he's an NBA champion, and I'm really happy to see that he was definitely part of this team. If not playing, he did make a small appearance in Game 5 of this NBA Finals, but he's been more of a coach on the sideline. He's been helping out Nikola Jokic and the other bigs. He's been a great veteran presence as his career is slowly coming to an end. I wouldn't be surprised if he decides to retire, but the bigger piece and the guy that actually played a ton more of minutes is Jeff Green. Jeff Green was a guy that was drafted alongside Kevin Durant in their Seattle Sonics days back in 2007. He transitioned as the franchise shifted over to OKC and was an integral piece before he was shipped off to Boston, and he missed obviously a year with that heart condition. He had open heart surgery, even having his heart stop for a full minute or two. The fact that he's even here is a miracle itself, that he is contributing to this Denver Nuggets team. He's an NBA journeyman. After leaving the Boston Celtics, he bounced around from team to team, was on the 2018 Cleveland Cavaliers team that made the NBA Finals. I remember he was just so emotional to even be part of the finals, despite them being swept by the Golden State Warriors that year. And I'm really happy that he's able to culminate his career and get that championship ring. He's been a great locker room guy. A lot of people really appreciate his veteran presence on the team. And I think he'll be hanging it up pretty soon, but still, this is a very good moment to celebrate for Jeff Green. With Nikola Jokic being awarded the Finals MVP of the 2023 NBA Finals with a stat line of 30, 14, and 7, I believe he's taken over as the best player on the planet. I've long been a fan of Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he's just a great two-way player. He's won Defensive Player of the Year. He has a couple MVPs. And in 2021, winning Finals MVP, culminating that championship with a 50-point performance in that clincher in Game 6, pretty much meant that he was the best player player on the planet, and up until this postseason run, I thought he still was. The thing is that I have now against Giannis is that he just has these weird free throw demons. He was working on it a couple years ago, got at least pretty good, but this year, especially in that postseason run, for whatever reason against the Miami Heat, he just came up very, very small. It's a psychological thing, it's a mental thing. He's been working on it, but this year he just didn't have it. Or now, it's Nikola Jokic's time. I mean, he's won 2 MVPs, now Finals MVP, and the fact that he can impact things on so many different levels offensively, he's a creator. He is probably the most skilled big man that we've seen in recent memory, just because he can do things as a point center and revolutionize this position. He is a guy that can shoot the three-pointer at an efficient clip. He's automatic from the line. A very gifted offensive player in terms of creating his own shot as well, and for others that we just haven't seen in the NBA. This is the first time a center has done so in a long, long time. It is something that he makes up for his defensive deficiencies, and that's always going to be a knock on him. He's never going to lock you down, but still, given that he has a huge amount of size, he can get defensive rebounds, he can get a couple block shots every now and then. So he's not a great defender, he'll never be that, but he's still a competent defender, that's for sure. So with this and this recent run to the NBA championship, Nikola Jokic is the best player on the planet. Denver's dynamic duo in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray have not only just set the league on fire being the best duo in the league, but the fact that they're international players is something that we have to take into account as well. Nikola Jokic obviously hails from Serbia, and Jamal Murray is Canadian. Both players have been part of this international trend that we're seeing in the recent NBA. I mean, the last 3 MVP winners amongst the 5 awards given out have been international players. We've seen it with Joel Embiid this year. 2 years in a row it was Nikola Jokic, and then the previous 2 years was Giannis Antetokounmpo. The NBA has always been an international league. I mean, when Barcelona hosted the 1992 Olympics, the Dream Team came and inspired a ton of international players like Dirk Nowitzki, Pau Gasol, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, to name a few. And this led to a renaissance, and even Argentina won the gold medal in 2004. Ever since then, the US has dominated, and we're seeing now that international players are still being very effective. They're not just role players, they're being the faces of franchises, winning major awards, being major contributors to NBA teams, and changing the whole dynamic or the narrative that they're soft and they're not mentally strong. Because I'm a descendant of immigrants. I knew what my parents had to overcome just to be part of this country. There was always a chip on your shoulder. Anytime you mess up, that is a reflection, or could be viewed as a reflection on your people. And that's what these players have done. I mean, they come from very humble roots. Not to say that all NBA players in America aren't, but there is a certain amount of privilege growing up here in America. You have a lot more opportunities. International players may not, and the fact that they're able to pick this up, that is arguably a foreign game to them, and do so and be so effective here in the States is just a testament to what they do. They work on fundamentals. They're usually pretty good free throw shooters. They know fundamentally how to set up things. They're pretty good team players, and they're not flashy. That's the biggest thing. Americans have become more about views on TikTok and likes on Instagram. Now we're seeing a lot more flashier stuff, and that's a reflection on AAU ball. That culture has been more corrupt, and we can get into that on another day. But the fact that we're seeing this international trend is probably showing a sign that the international players are taking more of a precedent in the NBA. I wouldn't be surprised if they challenge Team USA in the 2024 Olympics in Paris next year. We have to ask the question, what happened to Jimmy Butler in the NBA Finals? He was a guy that was having a very good run up until the NBA Finals, and this series he's taken significant dips across the board in his stat line. I mean, 22 points a game, and shooting numbers are down, his assists are down, rebounds are down, but just the amount of aggression too was really concerning. In the postseason run in the Eastern Conference, at least, he was very aggressive. He had a 57-point performance. He had a couple 40-point games as well. Just putting the Miami Heat on his back, and I understand that it's only sustainable for so long, and it's probably that he ran out of gas in these NBA Finals. He just had to do so much. He played 18 games, he missed one due to the ankle sprain, and that also could be a factor into his lack of effectiveness in this series. But it just felt like he wasn't even the best player for this Miami Heat team in the Finals. I think if Miami were to win this, I would have given Finals MVP to Bam Adebayo just because he's been doing it on both ends of the floor and been very aggressive offensively. He had that aggression that Jimmy did not in this series. He struggled in Game 5 for much of the ball game until very late. It just felt like it was too little too late. I understand that he's probably out of gas, that he had to carry this Miami Heat team throughout the playoffs and it's only sustainable for so long. But still, that just comes down to conditioning, and you do get a lot more rest in the finals compared to what you do in the postseason. It's just disappointing to see that he didn't have an iconic Jimmy Butler performance, because in the bubble in 2020, he still had a 30-point triple-double carrying the Miami Heat in that series, despite them not having Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic for a couple games. Well, if he was able to do so earlier, maybe Miami would have been in better position to even win this game. Obviously, we'll probably hear that his ankle injury was more serious than initially reported, but next season, Miami has to make some adjustments. And with Miami's elimination, I think some of those adjustments could be adding an extra guard that can create for this Miami Heat team. We know that they were carried by Jimmy Butler throughout this postseason, and once he seemed to run out of gas, it was pretty much curtains for them. They have some pretty good guards: Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, and Tyler Hero, who was injured for this postseason run, but still is an effective player when healthy. But they need some better guard play who is also consistent. I like Tyler Hero, but I don't think he is a guy that can be the best guard on a championship winning team. I think if Damian Lillard becomes available, that would be a great piece to add to this Miami Heat team, just to take some pressure off of Jimmy Butler. That he saves himself for the postseason, but even with that, he still ran out of gas in this postseason run. I know carrying a team is no easy feat, and it's not for all players, but still, he did run out of gas, and that is a reflection on the Heat roster. They didn't build enough around him. So I'm sure that they'll retool in this offseason, surround him with additional shooting, probably some wing defenders as well, but they need a changing guard to create for himself and the rest of the Miami Heat players as well if they want to contend in the Eastern Conference, because Boston and Milwaukee are still going to be standing in their way come next season. Manchester City has completed the treble with their win against Inter Milan in the Champions League final. Only the second English side to do so, and this is Pep's second ever treble in his days back in Barcelona, cementing himself as one of the greatest managers of all time. It was certainly a shaky start though for Manchester City. In the first half, it was scoreless, and there was a couple good chances they did have. Talk about Bernardo, and then a fantastic through ball from Kevin De Bruyne into Haaland. I thought it was a pretty good strike. Maybe could have been a little bit wider, but major props to Onana of Inter Milan for getting his knee out there on perfect timing. And honestly, despite a couple of near chances, Inter Milan's defense was pretty good to start off. I mean, scoreless first half, and even they had chances of their own, they just couldn't cash in. But this is pretty good position to start off in the first half for Inter Milan. You're heavy underdogs. Many people thought that it would be a rout, but you're keeping it close, and the longer that Man City doesn't score, the more pressure, and they're gonna press. They could make a mistake, and that nearly happened in the second half. Right on cue, Lautaro stole the ball between a miscommunication between Ederson and Akanji. He had Romelu Lukaku for a pretty decent look at if he just made the cross, but he decided to take on Ederson himself. Game-changing play right there. We saw a fantastic goal by Rodri, and I mean, that was the difference in this game. It was a fantastic shot. I mean, it was a scramble drill set up deep in Inter Milan territory and kind of got through them, and he was just there to give a perfect strike. Now, there were a couple defenders there. He curled it around them. Just a good strike. That's nothing really you can do defensively, and that was the difference in this game. Inter did have some chances, though, to equalize. In later stages of this match, we saw DeMarco have a chance. It hit off the crossbar, and then his rebound, unfortunately, was blocked by Lukaku. Just unfortunate timing and bad placement by him. He's going to be the butt of a ton of jokes. Man City is finally broken through after so many issues. They had to deal with an injury to Kevin De Bruyne, who left the first half of this match to a hamstring injury, and you thought this is 2021 all over again. Obviously, talking about Pep, there was this whole narrative he couldn't win without Messi. Obviously, he did that. He proved that. He's pretty much dominated England, which is probably the most parity league in all of Europe, where you don't really get a lot of repeat champions, and now they've won 5 out of the last 6 in the English Premier League. FA Cup title this season. It's just been a phenomenal run. This will probably go down as the greatest Manchester City team that we've ever seen, and it could be comparable comparable to that Manchester United team back in 1999. But of course, debates will always be there, but let's just celebrate this great moment for Manchester City. Novak Djokovic becomes the all-time leading men's Grand Slam leader with title number 23 at Roland Garros on Sunday. He becomes the first man ever to win at least 3 singles titles on different surfaces, and that means that he's been doing it on clay, on the hard court, and also grass. And I think that's the biggest difference or reason why I have him as my greatest player of all time compared to Rafael Nadal. Nadal, I've said, is more like a one-trick pony. 14 of his 22 titles came on clay, and yes, he's been able to do the career Grand Slam. He's been able to do it on the hard court in the Australian Open and the US Open. He's won a few Wimbledon titles, but Novak has won 7 in Wimbledon alone and 10 at the Aussie Open. To factor in the other 3, from the US Open and now the French Open, to make up his 27 total, just shows how dominant he can be at different surfaces throughout the year. He was 1 match away in 2021 from completing the calendar Grand Slam, only something that very few tennis players have ever done. The other thing that I have against Nadal is that he's just not as durable as Novak is. Djokovic has been pretty consistent in terms of health. It's just a matter now whether he plays at his best, and he's obviously human. He can lose a match or 2 throughout the year, absolutely. Nadal has been injured. He's missed a ton of tournaments due to injury, and the only thing really keeping out Djokovic has been the vaccine issue there. He missed the French Open, the Australian Open countless times earlier on in this pandemic. That is obviously one reason, but Nadal's injury history has been quite alarming, and he's missing time again this year to a hip injury. Obviously, these are just signs of age. He is also 36. He'll be turning 37 at the start of next season, which he did say would be his last season. I don't even know if healthy or how healthy he would be for next season to add on to his title case. But for right now, Novak is going to be untouched for many years to come unless there's going to be some other superstar. Obviously, the kid out of Spain was supposed to be the heir apparent, but he dispatched of him in straight sets in the semifinals, so they'll definitely have some other rematches throughout this season, I'm sure, either in Wimbledon or the US Open. But all around, Novak Djokovic is the greatest men's tennis player of all time. We got some reports that Chris Paul is going to be waived by the Phoenix Suns, and what does that mean for his career moving forward? Obviously, this season and even previous seasons, he's been showing signs of slowing down ever since they made that run to the NBA Finals in 2021. He just hasn't been as healthy, and that's also part of age. He's historically been an injury-prone player, but even so, age and father time is undefeated. This season in particular, defensively, he was slipping off, and his jumper was just not the same numbers from deep that we're used to seeing out of Chris Paul. And I think that's led to Phoenix cutting him for this offseason. They'll look to find a new guy to man that offense. I know Devin Booker is a pretty good initiator of the offense, but they need a typical point guard to help out there. What's next for Chris Paul? I'm not really sure. He's definitely going out a little sad. He's not the same guy as he used to be, but I think a team like the LA Lakers could love to have him in certain spots. Maybe not a consistent starter, but a guy that can be there for 60-70% of the season and then save him for the postseason. Hope he stays healthy because he is still a very good initiator of offense. He's always there to orchestrate offenses and help guys and position them to be in positions of success and give them good, high-quality shots. Another team I think that could really use his services are the LA Clippers. They've always been missing a point guard, and a return to Lob City, or at least to the LA Clippers, would be a nice narrative for sure. But I don't know who else would really sign him. I know that he's looking for a ring before he retires, but time is running out for Chris Paul. I think for the Phoenix that they could definitely look into Mike Conley replacing Chris Paul, because he's a guy that is similar to Chris Paul and is still an effective jump shooter. He's a very consistent from deep and can still orchestrate offensively. I think he was very good for the Minnesota Timberwolves this season, even with the Utah Jazz for the last 2-3 seasons there. So I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe make make a call out to Minnesota to see what his availability could be. Next season, it's title or bust for Phoenix. It's going to be a year where there's going to be championship expectations for this team, surrounding the team with talent around KD and Devin Booker. Could Kylian Mbappe be on the move? Because we're hearing some reports that he won't extend his contract beyond the 2024 season. So that puts PSG in a precarious situation to sell him before he takes the field next season. I wouldn't be surprised if Real Madrid tries to make that move, because there obviously been rumors swirling around that Mbappe is forcing a move to Real Madrid in the future. There was almost a chance he did so in 2022, but he backed out of it, re-signed with PSG. But I think that partnership is done. I mean, Messi is already leaving. He's going to Inter Miami next season, and we could be seeing Neymar out the door as well. I think that this run that they've had in recent years with that partnership, at least with him and Neymar, has been a little disappointing. We've seen them flounder at so many key points, especially in Champions League. In 2020, they went to the Champions League final, lost to Bayern Munich. They lost to Man City in the semifinals of the next season. They blew a 2-0 aggregate lead to Real Madrid in 2022, and then they lost again to Bayern this season. And I just think that their window has passed, and that's why Kylian Mbappe has just grown sick of the team. French titles are nice, but that's not really a defining moment to propel yourself amongst the all-time greats. Italy, Germany, and France are known as the farmers' leagues. You know that the bigger leagues are Spain and England. So if Real Madrid can't afford that fee, I wouldn't be surprised if some English team comes a knocking, but I just don't know who can afford him, given that he'll definitely be an expensive transfer, arguably the most expensive transfer that we've ever seen. But knowing that he's already seen Erling Haaland, a guy who was part of Dortmund and came up short with them for countless years, I think he'll try to make a similar move and try to join a big team or a stacked team to give him that Champions League trophy that's been missing in his trophy case. So that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys know what to do. Take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, and for my Spotify listeners, give our podcast a 5-star rating. It makes a massive difference on those platforms. All links are in the description, and I'll catch you on the next episode.